Blood for the Blood God and Skulls for the Skull Throne? Let's talk Butcher's Nails, Berserkers, and brutal melee combat with an overview of World Eaters in the new Chaos Codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking Chaos Marines. I've made a fair few videos on the new book over the last few weeks, and today I thought we'd do another Legion review, this time focusing on the World Eaters. The World Eaters are a bit of a special case in Codex Chaos Marines, as we already know that they will be getting a Codex sometime in the future. I guess it won't be coming until sometime in 2023 though, maybe something like 6 to 12 months away. Let's go for an average guess of 8 to please the Blood God. Until then though, you can still absolutely play World Eaters. They're usable as a legion within Codex Chaos Marines, in addition to a White Dwarf update that contains all their legion special rules. I did a brief review of that White Dwarf index when it drops, but we didn't really have the context, seeing as it wasn't available with Codex Chaos Marines, so today I thought we'd put it all together and see how World Eaters are shaping up with the new book. We'll talk over all their unique army rules, Khorne Berzerkers and their special characters, perhaps some of the best options for them to field, and look at one army list that has done well in an event. So first up, World Eaters in 9th edition maybe haven't been having such a great time so far, not particularly strong before their Codex dropped, and now since the Codex has come out, it still seems that they're probably one of the worst performing Chaos Space Marine legions, a low win rate in tournaments where the Chaos average is around about 50-50. My guess is that this might be partly because it's a pretty bad time to collect them really, as with the updates between Death Guard and Thousand Suns, a lot of core Chaos Space Marine options might not be translated over into the World Eaters Codex. It seems likely that they'll get things like Hellbrutes and Possessed, but are perhaps less likely to get things like Havocs, Raptors, or Obliterators. I think it makes people just a little bit wary as to delving into a full army of them right now. Besides this, even a few kits that are available at the moment, like the Khorne Berzerkers, we know that they're going to be replaced, and it seems likely that the World Eaters will be getting their own Terminators as well, probably making these standard Chaos Marine ones redundant buys. It might mean that just not many people are starting new World Eaters armies right now, and perhaps some of the best and brightest Chaos players are choosing other factions in the meantime. In any case though, while they're not super strong, they still have plenty of brutal options in game. Their Legion trait Butcher's Nails was updated, +1 attack on the first round of melee and not just when you're charging, a nice flat combat boost across the entire army, perhaps particularly useful on good combat units with a smaller amount of high power attacks. As well as getting the Legion trait, they do have a few of their own restrictions. Every core and character unit that can must take a mark of Khorne for +1 strength on the charge. You can't use anything else that's from Slaanesh, Nurgle or Tzeentch models, and that does shut out quite a lot of the big synergy pieces of the Codex. Slaanesh in particular has some really powerful options for getting close to the enemy, and understandably in a Khorne force you can't take any Psykers, including the Cultist Dark Commune as per the Chaos Marine FAQ. For all these restrictions though, you do get some benefits. While you can field Khorne Berzerkers in other legions, in World Eaters they're troops, so get OBSEC and field attachments, really quite nice on brutal melee infantry. They're also stronger here than any other legion basically, because they also get a legion trait, so they get the extra attack where they wouldn't pick up things like the Black Legion +1 to hit. You get access to the World Eaters Stratagems, Relics and Warlord Traits, and also a couple of unique character datasheets, Kharn the Betrayer and Zhufor the Impaler from Forge World. Stratagems wise, there are some good ones. For 1 command point, Scorn of Sorcery can cancel a psychic power on a 4+ within 24 inches. Really nice to have a coin flip chance of turning off the enemy's nastiest power. Can be great if it's something big and vital, like say teleporting a unit around the board or a movement boost. A spectacular one for melee units is for 1 CP Apoplectic Frenzy. This one's a pre-game move with an infantry unit up to 9 inches. Quite nice with the new tougher Berserkers, but great on most things in the Chaos Codex to be honest. Things like Possessed, Terminators, Raptors and Warp Talons will all love this. Really solid, particularly slow melee units love this, like Terminators. For 1 CP, there's Skulls for the Skull Throne. Kill a character in melee with one of your characters for D3 CP. Not really something that you have to aim for, but it's going to happen from time to time anyway. A couple of free command points now and again doesn't hurt at all. For 2 CP, there's Red Butcher's Terminators. This one's a pre-game upgrade on 1 single Terminator unit. They get +1 strength and fight twice. This one I think is really massive. Chaos Terminators are pretty solidly durable, and this just turns them into a unit that are going to remove the vast majority of enemy units in the game in a single fight phase. I'd be very tempted to include 1 big unit of Red Butchers in the army, even at the fairly pricey 2 CP investment before the game begins. For 1 CP we've got Kill Maim Burn. Nice name, and it allows you to consolidate 6 inches rather than 3. These ones are really handy to have in the bag, even if they're a bit situational. It means that you might be able to consolidate and tag an enemy gunline unit to shot down some guns next turn, or just make that last few inches onto an objective and maybe stop your opponent scoring. Next for 1 CP we have Wild Fury. This improves melee by AP -1. Nice buff and easy to access. Very good on anything with slightly low AP already, maybe things like Raptors or Warp Talons, and gives you the option of up to AP -4 Berserkers, which will be great for cutting through Armour of Contempt. For 1 CP we've got Stoke the Nails. A unit is considered to be in Wanton Slaughter and gains +1 strength. Not generally going to be super useful when you're already in Wanton Slaughter, but that seems like an excellent turn 1 or turn 2 buff. Again, seems pretty cool on things like Khorne Berzerkers, that'd get them up to a strength of 7. And in combination with exploding 6s, that's 2 pretty enormous melee buffs and very good value for 1 CP. Finally, for 2 command points we have Blood for the Blood God. Again, a pretty great name, but kinda situational. 2 CP for if you kill a unit in the fight phase, then your whole army gets to auto-pass morale this turn. The time to use this would be if you were going to auto-pass a morale test anyway, and you happen to have met the requirement. It's only really going to be superior to the auto-pass if it allows you to do it a second time in the same game, or if you've got multiple units in different parts of the board where you actually genuinely care about failing morale. This one does seem kind of super niche, to be honest. I wouldn't expect it to see so much play, but it does give you an interesting second option to go alongside the standard 2 command point auto-pass. Overall, a pretty solid and bloodthirsty section there. I like Red Butchers, Scorn of Sorcery is great versus Psychers, and the pre-game move and the melee buffs are all useful. Moving on, let's run through their character buffs, the Warlord Traits and Relics. I don't think that the Warlord Traits are enormously strong, to be honest, and I think for the most part you're going to be better off with ones from the core Chaos Codex. Running through briefly, we've got Slaughterborn, kill characters, monsters, or Titanic units for +1 attack and +1 strength. That one's Kharn's, and in general you're going to be better off with a melee damage boost that actually functions from the game starting. Arch Slaughterer gives you +D3 attacks if there's more enemies than friendlies within 3 inches. That one's not terrible, to be honest, but still I think most characters are going to be better off with Flames of Spite, allowing you to reroll wound rolls and mortal wounds on 6s. Disciple of Khorne allows you to reroll hits and wounds versus characters and models with 5+ wounds. Again, a solid enough melee boost, but again you're probably better off with Flames of Spite as it works against everything. I guess if you want to soup up another fighty character, it could be an option. Next there's Violent Urgency, a 6-inch aura of +1 to advance and charge that isn't core locked, interestingly. I do quite like that one. That's a pretty solid boost to get into melee, maybe particularly relevant out of Deep Strike Reserve. An 8-inch charge with a reroll at least has a fairly decent chance of success. Next, True Berserker changed a little bit. This one's half the damage taken, whereas previously it was just in melee. Good durability boost, but you might just want the 5+ Feel No Pain, which is pretty universal against everything, including mortal wounds. And finally there's Battle Lust, a 6-inch heroic intervention and fights first. Quite a nice combo, and that one can genuinely make your character protect other nearby units if you think they're going to get charged. As I said, I think most of these will be secondary picks after ones from the main book, but I think that most of them are usable. Otherwise, we've got Relics, and again, probably not my favourite section of the World Eaters rules, nowhere near as interesting as their stratagems. Again, running through quickly, we've got the Crimson Killer, a single shot, strength 9, AP -3 and damage 3 plasma pistol, which deals 1 mortal wound on a roll of a 4+ as well. Quite a nasty shot to give a character a sting in the tail, I suppose. Would need to fire multiple times though to really justify the CP. Gorefather's a Relic Power Axe or Exalted Power Axe now, +2 strength, AP -2 and damage 3. And it does have a fun extra ability in that wound rolls of a 6 cause 3 mortal wounds and the attack sequence ends. I actually think that this one's kind of interesting, say as an option to combo with the Flames of Spite. Put it on a character with a bunch of attacks and fish for those 6s, each one would deal you 4 mortal wounds there, which is pretty cool. The Banner of Rage is a priest once per game ability, an aura of +1 attack to World Eaters within 6 inches. I guess that doesn't hurt for a Dark Apostle maybe escorting a Terminator squad into the game or something. Being only one used throughout the whole battle though, I think is just a touch underwhelming. The Berserker Glaive replaces an axe or an exalted axe, strength +2, AP -3 and damage 2, and also gets the bearer a 5+ Feel No Pain. On a Terminator Lord, that one actually seems pretty reasonable. An extra pip of AP on your weapon, and far more importantly a 5+ Feel No Pain that actually make them kind of annoying to remove. I'm not 100% convinced Terminator Lords are the single strongest choice for World Eaters, but if you were running one, it wouldn't seem a bad idea. The Helm of Furore is an infantry only one that gives you +2 strength, but must declare a charge against any unit within 8 inches if it can do so. Really not good enough in my opinion, I'd go with something else. And finally Blood Hunger, something that gives you a chance to regenerate wounds from slain models on a 5+. You can't get more than 6 in this way per turn, not that you're likely to, and it's kind of a bit of a swingy one. If you can absolutely wade through entire hordes of enemy in the game, it might well be worth it, Against big armies like Knights or Custodes, you're never going to justify the cost, not super strong overall. Out of these, my favourites are Gorefather, the Berserker Glaive, and the Banner of Rage. I'd certainly consider all the other Chaos Marine relics though. Even just the Khorne Demon weapon that gives you an extra D3 damage seems pretty reasonable on say something like a Demon Prince. Moving on, let's talk datasheets, and you couldn't really talk World Eaters without talking about the Khorne Berzerkers, which are going to be receiving this nice new updated model at some point in the future. Their rules are currently in the White Dwarf supplement, and they're 22 points per model, a troop's choice in the World Eaters army, kind of similar to Chaos Space Marine Legionaries, but with a base strength of 5 and 5 attacks, and armed with some brutal Berserker chain blades. Those blades are strength user, AP-2 and damage 1, they come inbuilt with a mark of Khorne, which means that they get the +1 to strength. I don't believe that you have to pay the 15 points to upgrade them to that. And from there, it's basically an auto-includes to take the Chaos icon for an extra 5 points. That gives your melee attacks an extra pip of AP. 5 points from jumping to AP-2 to AP-3 for the whole squad is well worth it. And in practice, it means on the charge, a squad of 5 of these will be throwing out a pretty respectable 26 attacks at strength 6, AP-3, damage 1. It'll straight up obliterate most light infantry and stack a whole ton of hurt on medium infantry and even heavy targets too. Because there'll be World Eaters as well, that'll go even higher, so a big 31 attacks. Even small numbers of these roll some pretty spectacular numbers of scary dice, even without any buffs. Otherwise you can take plasma pistols, though I wouldn't bother at 5 points, and there'll be troops with Auspex giving you a very scary combat unit as your basic line infantry. I think they're dangerous enough that they might actually warrant a Rhino to transport them up the board, though large numbers of them foot slogging doesn't seem terrible. Otherwise, from the index, we also have Kharn the Betrayer as well. He's 140 points for a thoroughly murderous Chaos Lord, 6 wounds and 6 attacks, with a big strength of 6 as well. In combat, he strikes with Gorechild, so 6 attacks at strength user, AP-4, damage 2, potentially 7 in the first round of combat, and he does have the Blood for the Blood God rule to allow him to fight again a second time in the fight phase. 14 attacks at that profile is very scary for 140 points. He can solo entire squads of Space Marine infantry in a turn if he rolls well. Otherwise, he's got a fun plasma pistol that's locked to overheat mode. Khorne cares not from when the blood flows, even if it's out of your hand after it's melted. It's got a 4+ invul save, the standard reroll 1's aura for nearby World Eaters core units. He ignores any hit roll or weapon skill modifiers, so he'll basically always be hitting on 2s. Has a mark of Khorne for +1 strength on the charge, for strength 7 usually. And as the Betrayer, he does have the unhelpful ability to throw some mortal wounds on your own troops. If he's nearby friendly units at the end of the movement phase, he has a good chance to deal 2 mortal wounds to them. That's not incredibly helpful given that he isn't all that tough and he really wants to be screened if possible. Might be reasonable to try and field him out of transports if you do want to make him work. Somehow he manages to keep a lid on his temper while he's boxed up with a whole bunch of angry Khorne Berzerkers. Otherwise, in a lesser well-known option, there's also Zhufor the Impaler for the World Eaters. He's a Forge World character model from the Imperial Armor Compendium, and is another unique Chaos Lord for 140 points, similar to Kharn the Betrayer. If all you really need is a Chaos Lord that just fights very hard, this guy is actually not too bad for the cost, I think. Aside from the standard Chaos Lord stuff, he's got 6 wounds, 6 attacks, and a 2+ armor save, quite hard to shift with Armor of Contempt. And in melee, he does put out a very reasonable amount of high power attacks. 7 attacks at strength 10, AP3 and damage 3 will be great at chewing through anything from heavy vehicles to elite infantry alike. He's even got a sweep mode as well, made at strength 6, AP-2, damage 1. You get double the attacks with that, so with the World Eaters on the charge, that could be 14 attacks against light infantry. He is fairly efficient at just about anything that he targets. Otherwise, he's got a few other fun things. Favour of the Blood God to deny psychic power like a Psyker, doesn't hurt at all. And also an Icon of Slaughter, which gives enemies a -2 leadership debuff when they're close to him, which alongside that melee profile might actually change the enemy into failing a morale check or 2. Doesn't hurt to have. With a big strength 10 and damage 3, I think he is worth consideration. Again though, maybe kind of depends if you want something like a Demon Prince or Lord Discordant, both of which are big meaty and tough melee characters with other benefits, and they don't cost all that many points more than this guy. Finally, for core World Eater rules, we have their unique secondary objective from Warzone Nephilim. Skulls for the Skull Throne is a Purge the Enemy one, and it's one of those type of ones where you basically declare a duel against a character, pick one of your own World Eaters ones and one of the enemy ones, and you get victory points depending on how easily you kill them. You get 5 victory points if you've killed them by the end of the game, another 5 if it happened to have been killed in melee, and a further 5 on top of that if your selected character was the one that killed it. If you do all 3 of them, then you gain a command point, though I must admit I don't think it's enormously strong. It really is quite swingy. If you don't kill the character, you're getting nothing for it, and it gives your opponent a good counterplay in that if they don't really need to, they could just play fairly safe with the character and make sure that you don't get to them. Maybe best used if there's an enemy character in their army that they really need to move forward quickly with. Perhaps even something like an Imperial Knight Gallant that's going to have to charge at you if it's going to have any impact on the game. So rounding up a bit, what are some of the strongest options for World Eaters in 40k right now? First up, I do think that Khorne Berzerkers are a pretty nice troops option. Obsec and loads of melee damage works quite well, and I think that both Kharn and Zhufor are usable, but are going to face stiff competition from other generic options, Demon Princes, Lords Discordant, or even Abaddon the Despoiler himself. Obviously it goes without saying that just about anything that's good in melee will do well with them, +1 attack and plenty of easy melee buff options are both great things. Possessed and Warp Talons both seem pretty reasonable for that role. They also get the Khorne keyword, which they don't usually get otherwise, and that does open up a few options for them, such as that Dark Apostle prayer for early wanton slaughter. I think those Red Butcher Terminators are pretty standout as well. A unit with the Black Rune of Damnation and maybe a Dark Apostle for Illusory Supplication makes them really hard to kill, and then you basically got as much melee damage as you could possibly want with fighting twice with a whole bunch of accursed weapons or power fist attacks. They will miss things like Master Possession healing them though, and admittedly if you do make them Red Butchers and pre-game move them, you are spending 3 CP right there before the game even starts, a pretty pricey thing to do in Nephilim. Finally, perhaps aside from other generic good things within Codex Space Marines, I think that transports are really quite usable for the World Eaters. I feel they're perhaps the most likely legion to make good use of rhinos with Khorne Berzerkers piling out of them, and I think even Land Raiders could be kind of interesting, a big tough battlefield bunker from which you can pour a whole load of melee hurt. As mentioned from the character upgrades, I think I generally prefer the Flames of Spites to pretty much any of the unique Warlord traits. If you're running multiple fighty characters though, then they might help. From the relics, I like the Gorefather, Banner of Rage, and the Berserker Glaive the most, though they do incentivize you running standard Chaos Lords, which you might or might not want to do. The Khorne Demon weapon for the extra D3 damage is quite good, though I think that they will miss some of the other relics that are locked to the other gods. That very nice Golax Demon weapon is locked to Nurgle, and Slanesh has that elixir that prevents you from taking more than 3 wounds in a turn, which is also very good. Out of the stratagems, Scorn of Sorcery, the pre-game move, and the 2 melee buffs I think are maybe some of the most standout, but some of the others are very usable as well, at least in the right situation. Overall, perhaps the biggest strength for the faction are nice Khorne Berzerkers, very usable Legion trait, and some powerful stratagems with which to deal some massive melee damage. Finally, to round up, I thought we'd take a look at one successful list that has had some success in one tournament. World Eater wins have been pretty thin on the ground, but I did notice this list on Best Coast Pairings by Patrick Sessions, who used it to take a Dog Days Daring Do RTT, a small 12-man event. I must admit it's a bit of an unusual looking World Eaters list, a single battalion and a super heavy auxiliary for a Brass Scorpion. I wouldn't say that this represents your typical World Eaters competitive list, but obviously it's had at least some success. Obviously the most standout feature is that Greater Brass Scorpion, 475 points worth of Khorne Demon Engine, 28 wounds at toughness 8 with a 3+ save and a 5+ invul. It is a lot of points for just one model, though it does have a fair amount of anti-infantry shooting plus a demolisher cannon, and 6 attacks at basically knight style profiles, either at strength 16 AP 4 and damage 6, or strength user AP 2 and damage 2. It'll likely be hitting on 2s all game with that Warpsmith as well, who can also heal it for a few wounds. Just on the raw stats I don't think it's terrible, there might just be a bit of a big swingy model to be honest. If it goes down to the intense anti-tank of 9th edition with all the damage D3+3 that you can get, then it's going to be very underwhelming. But I guess in this list it could kind of add to the armour overload, as I think that most armies are going to struggle to deal with this, plus a Land Raider and 3 Rhinos as well, at least quickly. Speaking of which, the rest of the list is read by Abaddon the Despoiler, who's the Warlord. Not really too uncommon to see in most competitive Chaos lists right now. It's easily justifiable just with his damage and defensive profiles alone, never mind the fact that he can make units reroll hits. Then the rest of the list is basically mech World Eaters, 5 units of 5 Khorne Berzerkers, each one with a Chaos icon for the extra -1 AP, and they'll be loaded up into a Land Raider and 3 Chaos Rhinos, a bit of speed and a bit of protection against enemy shooting, and just about any one of those can hit very very hard indeed with the big 31 attacks on the charge, potentially at AP -4 or with extra strength if you use the stratagems. They should be able to put a whole load of pressure on enemy objective holders, and then there's also a unit of cultists to sit around on the home field objective. Definitely a slightly odd skew list for the World Eaters there, but interesting to know that it works at least to some level. I feel like the majority of the more competitive World Eaters lists won't go for Brass Scorpions or Khorne Lord of Skulls. Maybe you could replace them with other things like Possessed or World Eaters Terminators that have been upgraded to Red Butchers. Still though, World Eaters do seem to be a challenge to win with at the moment, so pretty cool to see someone winning an event with them of whatever size. So I think we'll leave that there for our roundup of World Eaters then. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and how have your servants of the Blood God been faring on the battlefields of 40k so far? If you've enjoyed the video, feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k stuff coming. I'll hope to cover the other Chaos Legions as and when we get to them. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that links down in the video description if you're interested. If you have been enjoying the videos on the channel, then the Patreon page is how I keep them coming quite so regularly. If you are enjoying quite a bit, any support is enormously appreciated, and channel patrons do get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.